So today, you have been placed on mute, so thank you so much for communicating with us through the Ask Question function. And that's definitely how we want you to participate throughout this session going forward. So today's host is the lovely Kerri Corturillo. She is an experienced instructor and sales coach. She spent over 20 years working in business-to-business sales and sales leadership roles. Kerri has led large-scale development initiatives to transform sales cultures, which have improved customer experience and sales achievement. Her previous experience includes management training, organizational development, product management, and human capital management consulting. Kerri holds a Master of Adult Education and also maintains her Ontario Certified Teaching designation. Now, without further ado, let's get started with audio.
Thank you so much, Kay, and again, to everyone on the phone, apologize for the delay in us getting started. Welcome. We are so excited to have you on the call today as we talk about growing wallet share and specifically talk about how to build value within your customers' businesses, as well as through the relationships that you have with your clients. So this really will be our focus for our session today. The outcomes that we're looking to achieve are to really help you understand the different levels of value, the value that your customers seek from you, and how that value really does shape the relationships that you forge, that you develop with your client base. We're also going to talk about creating some specific strategies to elevate strategic partnerships. And the key word here really is looking at your base and figuring out which key clients, which segments of your base are the ones that you really want to develop that relationship with. Who are you going to spend time with so that you are at the right level of relationship at the right time with the right client to bring success for you and for your customer. Then we're also going to look at the 4 key roles that you play as an account manager and as a strategic sales rep, so that we can ensure that you are also adding the right level of value to the relationship you have with your customer. So that's really our focus for this session as we move forward with this in the next hour and a bit. So let's first start with looking at the overall value pyramid. And maybe we can start with a question for those of you on the phone. So here's our question to you. What's the risk if a client sees you simply at the supply level today? So looking at that value pyramid, if you really have a client that is just seeing you at a supply level, at a vendor level, at the cell level, what does that mean overall for you and for the client, and what risk does that pose? So we'll give everyone a moment to respond to that poll question. And Kate is madly tabulating the results as we speak in the background, so we can see where that goes. So what's the risk if a client simply sees you at the supply level today? And you can definitely pick between the different options that you see on your screen. Okay, I think we've gotten responses from most everyone. Yeah, price sensitivity is definitely an issue that can happen if you are just seeing sort of at that level with your client. At that point, your client is really sensitive to how you compare from a price perspective to your competition, because it is really easy to switch you out at that point. Really great point for those of you who chose that. It looks like someone else talked about it's a commodity space. Yeah, again, it's that rip and replace, right? The ease in which a client can replace the functionality or the service that you provide. What I find for many organizations that I work with is when they have clients see them at that kind of supply level, one of the real big risks around the commodity issue is that they get really siloed within the organization to a point where the company, the client, only sees that one thing that they do, regardless of whether or not the organization can provide a level of different support services and products to the organization that can help them, and create more value. But because they're only seen for that one thing, they're sort of pigeonholed in that area. And that one thing can definitely become a commodity. So really good call out on that. And it looks like many people responded the most to the potential risk that the client can leave you very quickly. That is very true. The more you are ingrained within your client's business at a strategic level, the more value that you can demonstrate to the client at those levels, the harder it is for the client to entangle themselves from the relationship with you. Our goal is always to create stickiness. It's to be as close to the client as we possibly can, so that it is more difficult for them to potentially leave. So how do we continue to focus on that? How do we look at ways to create some of that entanglement with our client so leaving isn't something that they can do in a very easy way? So that definitely is one of the risks of staying at that sort of bottom supply level. So let's look at each of the different levels within the value pyramid. At the supply level, you guys called it out, clients can be very price sensitive, you may be siloed, it may be very difficult to expand the number of relationships that you have within the business, and it can mean that the client can leave you really quickly as a result. If you are able to then move up that value pyramid, move up the value chain into a role of consultant, you're really starting to build more of a value story with your client. What I've seen at this level is that many clients are able to understand the value that you bring because we've quantified that for them in terms that make sense for their business. We've looked at how do the products or services that we provide, how do they help the customer to improve their performance, to improve their productivity, to improve their profitability. How does working with us actually help the client to better serve their customer? That's all about defining value at that level and truly being a consultant to the client. At that point, we are able to then invest more in the relationship. We may be able to go a little bit high, wider, and deeper within the relationship, have more connections into the client's business. And the client starts to see us as more than just one product or one service. They start to see the value that we bring and the impact that it has on their business. As we continue to move up the value pyramid, an ultimate goal may be to become that strategic partner. We hear that language a lot now from organizations that want to become the client's trusted partner. Well, what actually does that mean? When I think of what it means to be a strategic or a trusted partner of a client, the best example I can give is when you've got such a great relationship with a client that they truly rely on you to help them manage their business. They don't just see you in terms of the service or the product that you provide, but they see you in terms of the expertise that you bring. That's really key. And I love this example that one sales rep gave me. He said, I know I'm at the strategic partner level with my client when I get that phone call from my client and it goes something like this. Hey, this is something we're working on. It's a problem we have. I have no idea if we can help you with this or if you can help us with this. I'm not quite sure if this is in your wheelhouse, but we thought of you first. So can we talk about it? Can we whiteboard it? Can we have a conversation around it? That's a strategic conversation. That's when they're looking at you beyond what it is that you bring in terms of a product and truly looking at the relationship, the experience, and the expertise that you can provide. And at that point, when it comes to threats from the competition, when it comes to price sensitivity, we're really able to lower or decrease those risks as a result, because that entanglement within the customer's business has become, so complex and so sticky that it's very difficult for the customer to almost figure out where they start and you stop. That's a really key part of developing that level of relationship. So as we move forward, I really would love you to think about what is your goal? Where do you see most of your clients today? And where should the client fit in terms of the value that you provide? We often tell reps that you can't be everything to everybody. I would absolutely love if all of your clients were at that strategic level. We just know that that's an unrealistic expectation. One, because it takes a lot of time and effort for clients to have that level of engagement with us, and there's not always the payback for that level of strategic partnership. So you got to meet the client where they are. So really think about, as you are assessing your client base, where do your clients fit today, and what makes the most sense in terms of the time you need to invest in order to further develop the relationship. If you have a client that sees you at a vendor level and you can match the effort and the time that you put into that client relationship so that, it stays at that level because that's where they want to stay, then that's fine. But make sure that you are objectively assessing that relationship with each client. And from there, you can determine, what are my goals? What are the relationship goals? How can I improve value? And what will this mean not only for my client's success, but for ours as well as we move forward in this relationship? Go ahead. Kate, sorry, please jump in.
Sorry, yeah. I just wanted to jump in. There was a little confusion with seeing the PowerPoint, so I just wanted to let you know that I jumped in. So I'll follow along with you.
Wonderful. So do you have control now, Kate,
yes.
over them? Okay, so perfect. So we're switching slides. Okay. So when we're looking at and again, as people are on the line, please don't hesitate. Leverage your chat function. If you have a question, if there is a specific comment you'd like to make, we definitely would love to hear from you. We want to make this as interactive and as valuable to you as possible. So we're here to answer any questions that you have. So as we continue to look at how we put in place this value pyramid and how we leverage the pyramid to help us to assess the level of relationship we have with each of our clients, there's a couple of questions I want you to keep in mind. First, ask yourself, is the objective to build an environment where our clients seek strategic level value? Is that realistic? Why or why not? And we said earlier that it really isn't really realistic to have a strategic partnership with every single client. So we got to figure out what's important to the customer and what's important to us. And what criteria, what strategies are you going to use to help you evaluate that? So really think about what tools you can use to determine what's the best relationships to have with my client right now. And if you're making the determination that, you know what, this is not worth the time or the effort, then really think about what's the why behind that. So you've got that objectively understood, and that's something that you can communicate throughout your organization with your account team. The other question I'd like you to ask is, when is it realistic to expect to climb to the strategic level in the value pyramid? So just because it may not be the right time right now, there may be another point in time down the road where it does make more sense to invest in that overall relationship. So I want to share with you now a tool that I've used and that I've coached many teams to leverage that can help them figure out just what level of value do we provide to the client today, and what does this mean in terms of the investment we're going to make in our relationship. So this tool is, if you could just hit the next one, we'll go forward. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, so we just want to make sure that we are showing you the right tool. So we'll come back to that, Kate, if that's okay. All right. So one of the tools that I've used that have worked really well for me is actually something called value mapping. So with this tool, this is something that you would do in a collaborative way with your client, but it's where you would assess the current opportunities that you've got in your pipeline today, as well as what you've sold to the client within whatever period of time makes the most sense for your business, whether that's been within the last year, the last 2 years, or the last 6 months. And then you look at what are the specific criteria that you would use to evaluate the strategic level of what you've already provided to the client and what you're currently looking to provide to them today. And that criteria can be based on a number of things. It can be based on the amount of revenue that you're going to get or that you've gotten from working with the client on that initiative. It can be based on the strategic value of solving that problem from the customer's perspective. But the key here is to look at the criteria that helps you to define value both for you and for the customer. As an example, if you have a strategic initiative that you've worked with the customer on that was really high level of value for you, it gave you profit, maybe it opened up new markets for your business, for your products or services, maybe it helped you to expand into regions that you weren't working in before, or into industries that you hadn't been working in previously. That has a high level of strategic value. That's just one side of the equation. When you also look to evaluate that initiative, what was the strategic value for your client? What did this enable them to do differently? Did it help them to solve a problem that they really needed to solve? Did it help them to reach a new customer base? Did it help them to save a significant amount of money that they were able to invest elsewhere? If the answer is yes to those questions, then that's an initiative where you've provided a high level of value to the client, as well as an initiative that's provided a high level of value to you. The more initiatives, opportunities, services in that quadrant of high levels of value for you and the client, the better overall your relationship with that customer. And the more you should invest in continuing to develop the overall relationship that you have. So as you're looking at the value pyramid, really look at what have we done for them in the past? What are we working on with them now? What are our opportunities for the future? And what's the level of value that those initiatives, those things will bring to our organization and to the clients as we move forward? And then the last question really want you to focus on is it ever acceptable to operate at the supply level? Why or why not? And the answer to that one really is, of course, it's acceptable. You will have clients that view you as vendors. You will have clients that you are providing a very specific product to that may not be a strategic product for you or a strategic service for you, and that's okay. You just need to make sure you're using some kind of objective criteria to make that evaluation, and do that on a regular basis. Review your pipeline, review your base, have that conversation with your internal teams, and make sure that all of your assessments of where your clients are in line. Does anyone have any questions or comments before we move on from the value pyramid around that? And just before we move off of the concept of value pyramid, the one thing I would add is really think about, how does the client view us today? If I was the customer, how would I want them to be talking about our services, our solutions, the value that we bring to them? I had a CEO that I worked with who said this to me, and it's really stuck. What she said was, you have a high level of strategic value, that you've developed a strategic partnership with a client when they're sitting around the table internally, right, when you're not in the room, and it's a regular budget review, and they're looking at all of the things that they're spending money on, and they're going line by line, and when they get to your service and their solution, and somebody in that room stands up and says, don't touch that we need. If we don't have that, we can't do business. That's a sure sign that you've got a really high level of strategic value. So what can you do? What are the things that you can say? What are the things that you can demonstrate to your client to be at that level, so that's what they say about you when you're not there? Okay, so let's talk about, what does it mean to develop that strategic partnership? What kinds of relationships do we need to have with the client in order to really bring the most effective partnership to the forefront? Well, let's look at some traditional ways that we tend to partner with our clients, and the ways that we have set up relationships, and which are the ways that are the most effective. So first and foremost, there is typically a traditional partnership. When I work with sales reps, this tends to be the relationship that they have with the clients that I tend to see the most. And what this really looks like is, they have a one-to-one relationship with the client. The sales rep owns the relationship, or the account manager owns the relationship, and they have a connection or a resource on the client side that they tend to work with directly. And those two are the ones who tend to do the most communication. They're the ones who work together, and they're the ones who hold the relationship with each other. So here's my question for you. What's the risk of this kind of relationship with your client, even if it's a really good one? Even if, the account executive and the client rep get along great, really like each other, and seem to work well together. What's the risk of having this one-to-one relationship? And if you please don't hesitate, use the chat to respond, and we'll give you a moment to do that.
So Danielle has said, if the sales rep leaves or changes positions, the relationship may fail. And Debbie has piped in and said, if one of you leaves, the relationship is over. And Angela had a good point. She said, limited or narrow view of clients' needs.
Yeah, all of those are really great points. Absolutely. If there is any issue with one individual leaving, whether it's on the supplier side or on the client side, then the whole relationship with the organization is at risk. You know, our customer relationship should be bigger than just us and should be bigger than the one client representative on their side. So by, just having that one-to-one relationship, there is a huge risk if one or the other happens to leave. And the third one that you mentioned, Kate, if you could repeat that one.
That was from Angela. Maybe she'll submit that again, but it's Todd actually said it's not giving enough points of contact to make you sticky with the customer, and Joe said easy to be stuck in silo.
Yeah, that's a really good point as well. So yeah, it definitely it's really easy then for the client to walk if they're getting a better price, a better relationship from another provider, and it is from a overall kind of perspective in terms of what's the risk there. It is really easy not only for the client to walk away, it is really easy for us to get siloed within one area of the customer's business. And what we mean by that is there if we're just working with one part of the business, we tend to have a very narrow view of the goals, the objectives within that client's organization, because we're only getting it from one perspective. So it's sometimes very difficult for us to share the value of what we provide because it's only looking at it from a very narrow view. Being able to go high, wide, and deep within a client organization is the key to creating that stickiness. Being able to forge multiple relationships so that you can see multiple perspectives in the client's organization helps to enable that entanglement and create stickiness across the organization. So great comments, everybody. Really good job.
And Mike actually just said, and may have more than one decision maker.
Well, yeah, and if you've got more than one decision maker, but you've only got a connection with one person, you may not actually even be connecting with the person who's making that final decision. And what happens when you ask somebody, are they the decision maker? You know, in my experience, even if they're actually not the one signing the contract, they tend to say, oh, it's me, right? It's me. So we may, again, be getting a really limited view over who those key stakeholders are in the client relationship and how decisions are actually being made. So let's look at another model as we move forward of how we may set up relationships with our clients. So this one is called the extended partnership. And we're looking at this to mitigate the risk of just having that one-on-one relationship. So often what we do as sales reps is, okay, I'm gonna go and find more people within my client's business to work with, right? I want to go work with procurement, IT. I might then connect in with the business side. I might get some strategic relationships and really kind of focus on how I can, speak to more people within the customer's organization. This is a great approach for sure, because you do want to have multiple relationships, and that does mitigate some of the risks that we talked about earlier of just having that one-on-one relationship. However, this type of extended partnership also has some inherent risks in it. So we'll give you a moment. If you could think about what do you think the risks are of having this kind of relationship with your client, where you may have one person on the supplier side who has relationships with multiple people within the client's business. We'll give you a moment to respond to that as well.
So Angela has said, could be viewed as untrustworthy. Why are you talking to them?
Oh, Angela, I love that comment. Absolutely, because here's what happens. You may have a gatekeeper within your client's organization, or the person who sees you as or they see themselves as that main connection with you. So they actually might, take offense to the fact that you're trying to speak to other people, that you're trying to, that old expression, go over my head or go around me. So that may create some animosity, or it can create some friction with your initial contact for sure.
And Joe had said that it's time consuming.
It takes a lot of time and effort, and you need to understand what's the payback or what's the reward of having those different connections. Absolutely. Think about some other risks that could be a part of this as well. So you had mentioned previously that there's a risk if the rep leaves. This is absolutely the case as well if that happens in this relationship. If the rep moves on to another role or goes to another organization, then the client has no other individual to work with, and it's almost like they've got to start all over again. And there's one other risk that I want you to keep in mind, and it's more one that actually has an impact on you as the sales rep. And that risk is you could potentially be pigeonholed into working with this client over the course of your career. Not necessarily a bad thing, but if you are looking to expand your role, move into new industries, maybe go into a leadership position, what can often happen is you are then seen as the rep for this client. And it can be really difficult for you to then move into other roles. And I know early in my career as a sales rep and then as a sales leader, I actually fell into this trap myself. I was working with a large financial institution that was my client for 8 years. I had done exactly this. I had found individuals outside of my main contact to work with. I had started to spread kind of my influence and my relationships across the FI, the financial institutions organization. I had been doing a really successful job, which I was really proud of. And as a result, my organization wanted to then promote me into a management role. The problem was, once I got into that management role, I actually was never able to fully let go of my relationship with the financial institution. Even though we assigned another rep, they never called that rep, they called me. And it was really difficult for me to kind of pull myself out. And it took a lot of time and a lot of effort to do that. And it actually, it really stopped me from being successful in my management role as quickly as I could have been. So think about when you're looking at this kind of extended partnership or relationship with your client, what are the drawbacks, what are the risks on the client side, what are the drawbacks or the risks for you as the rep in this scenario. All right, let's look at two more as we move forward. This one is interesting, integrated partnership. I have a lot of organizations that I work with that see this as, oh wow, look, we've done something great when we've developed an integrated partnership. And it is truly a really interesting relationship to forge with your customer, because what you're doing here is you're really mapping the buying center to the appropriate person on the supplier side. You may have somebody within your organization that is the IT expert or a specific expert in what your client does, and they're able to then speak to that expert on the client side. This is what an integrated partnership does. You start matching that expertise to that expertise or that experience or that need on the client side, and then you're able to have different levels, deeper conversations with the client. One of the key benefits of this type of integrated partnership is that you do tend to learn a heck of a lot more about your client's business. You understand the processes that they go through. You understand the different departments, their needs, and you definitely have a good understanding of what it takes for them to be successful at different levels of the organization, or at least across different departments or different areas within their company. Given that, though, there are also some inherent risks, just like in every other partnership or arrangement we've talked about. So I'll give you a minute. I want you to think about, and please respond to the chat. What do you think some of the risks of this kind of relationship with your client might be?
So Joe has said it's hard to scale.
Yeah, definitely. It can be hard to scale if you don't have the same number of resources on your side of the business as the client would. Yeah, really good point.
And Michael jumped in and said, this looks like a very complex relationship to coordinate.
Wow, great point there. Not only is it complex to coordinate, sometimes it's actually impossible. So here's what happens. I think we talked about earlier in the first example that we can get siloed, right, with only working with one client. We can actually have a very siloed relationship when we're looking at an integrated partnership in this way, because we've got specific people in our organization talking to specific people in the client organization, and what happens is we often don't talk to each other. So when we're looking at putting together a comprehensive account strategy, or we're looking at how are we going to move the relationship forward as a whole with this client, it's often done very piecemeal, and we don't have a lot of collaboration, conversation happening internally to mitigate that risk. So that is definitely one drawback. It is complex to manage, and it can really silo all of the resources within your organization.
And so Angela has said miscommunication and conflicting perspectives on needs.
Oh gosh, great one, Angela. Yeah, not only miscommunication, but what you said about misleading perspectives is really key. What I found in working with organizations that have this kind of partnership set up with their clients is that one of the drawbacks can be a very limited or view of the customer. And so when that information does come back into the supplier organization, it's very difficult to get to any kind of agreement on what's important to the customer. And as a result, it's very difficult for us to then move forward on anything. And I'm thinking of one example in particular, and it was with a client that I worked with. They had this approach with their customer, and the individual that was much more specialized in the product was working with this person who was specialized on the client side, and they had a very different view of what needed to happen with the initiative that they were working on. The account manager had a very different view. The operations person who was working with somebody on the operations side of the customer had a very different view. And as a result, the initiative that they were trying to move forward on actually fell apart. And the client ended up going to the competition because they couldn't figure out how to organize this with the supplier. The other potential risk, by the way, that comes up is when this relationship with the client, if it's not centralized, if there's not one person kind of coordinating and managing the communication, there's a lot of information about the vendor that tends to get communicated to the client. And that might be information that we don't want to share. And it may be even a misperception of what we can provide and the value we can bring to that customer. So we really want to manage that carefully and make sure that we are communicating the right things at the right time with the right people. It does look incredibly complex, so how do we minimize some of that complexity to create a better way to deal with the customer and a better way to move forward?
So Danielle actually talked about that too. She said if the supplier's organization is disorganized or not on the same page, it could be exposing to the client. For example, mixed messaging.
Yep.
And Youssef commented there may be siloed conversations happening that do not allow unified messaging for important initiatives.
Yeah, and that unified message is so important, especially as you start to work with more higher senior executives, higher levels within your customer's business. They want to make sure that there's a cohesive approach. You want to make sure there's a cohesive approach. So this kind of relationship, although on paper and sometimes in practice, looks like it's really valuable because, wow, look how we've created all these connections within our customer's business. You're absolutely right, everybody. There is some risks there. And the risks are miscommunication, misrepresenting our needs, and the potential of looking disorganized for sure.
And the final comment Todd mentioned, you're relying on the competency of your other team members and you may not be on the same level.
Oh, I love that comment. That is so true. As much as we need to trust the team that we work with, we need to know that they bring, the best of themselves to work every day. Again, we need to be able to communicate and collaborate. So there is a level of trust, but we also need to hold each other accountable to what we are doing and what we're saying to the client. So how do we do that if we're siloed, right? And how do we do that if we're not communicating well? Really good point, everyone. So let's look at the last potential way that you can create a relationship with your client that's going to bring value, and then when you're looking at kind of moving up that value pyramid, that can help you to do that. So this is what we call the synergistic partnership. This is another way to partner with your client. And at the heart of this approach is some of the things that we talked about were missing from the last relationship framework, and that's collaboration. So this is where you and the client, there's two main contacts, both within your organization and within the client's organization, but the two of you really maintain that strong relationship, and you provide connections and networking into your organization as a result. But that level of connection is really maintained by two primary people within both organizations. So this is where, again, that collaboration, communication is really at the heart of this. So we'd really love for you to comment at this point. What do you guys think of this kind of partnership? Are there any risks, and what are the potential benefits of working in this way? We'll give you a moment to respond to that.
So Angela has said works great in culture of collaboration.
Yeah, so Angela, you've raised a really good point. When you are looking to create this kind of relationship with your client, the very first thing you need to do first is assess what is our internal culture. Do we have the right culture? Do we have the right setup, the right behaviors within our own organization to support this? And collaboration is really key. So, again, really want to make sure we're making that assessment first to make sure that this is going to work for us.
And then Danielle said, can you explain the difference between this and the first model?
Oh, great question. So the difference here is that the client and the contact at the client side and the contact within our side, at the supplier side, are the main connectors. But they also are able then to work with others within the organization. So if I could use sort of a practical example with this. As I'm the strategic account executive for my account, I'm working with my main client contact. When we have a specific initiative that requires us to have conversations with specialists within the client's business, and perhaps specialists within my business, we want to look at how we're going to implement a new IT solution. And we really need IT to talk about where does this sit within their priorities. It would be up to myself and that client contact to go out and reach into our organization to pull those IT resources into the conversation. But we don't step away. We don't step back from that. What we do is we manage that communication within the two organizations. And that management becomes a key part of our role in managing the overall relationship. Was that helpful? Hopefully that was helpful in terms of answering that question.
Yeah, and Joe has actually made 2 points. He said, the benefit provides give and take to grow with time, and the risk is hard to remove yourself from the relationship and keep company connection.
Yeah, so there is always risks in any of these models for sure. And I think you raised one that is really key. So if you are, if you do move on, if you are looking to, move on to other relationships or, advance within your organization, how do you actually extract yourself from that relationship with your client? And really the one piece of advice I would give you there is how much time can you put into developing new relationships? The key here is having somebody within your organization that you can mentor, that you can bring forward, that you can have these conversations with, so that when you step out, it's easier, not perfect, but it's easier for them to step in and take that role on. And the same on the client side. And these are, by the way, conversations you can have with your client contact. We often talk a lot with our clients about what we're doing with them. What products are we launching? What initiatives are underway? What services do we provide? How often do we take the time to really step back and look at what kind of relationship do we want to have? Not just from our perspective, but from their perspective too. And then based on that, what are the things that we're going to do to maintain that relationship? What are the practices we're going to put in place? What happens if, right? Having those kinds of conversations with your client can also help to elevate the level of relationship that you've got with them. And that adds value to your overall connection with that customer's organization. So the key here, everyone, is really thinking of your client as an asset to your business. And what I mean by that is really looking at that client relationship as you would look at your proprietary software, as you would look at your intellectual property, as you would look at any product or service that you provide that's a differentiator for you in the market. Your client relationships are also differentiators, and they should be protected in the same way. So think of having that asset, managing that asset, keeping track of all of the connections, the components, the information about your client in one place, like your customer relationship management system, if you have a CRM, something like that you can leverage, so that your organization can maintain and make use of that intellectual property about your client. So think about how you would do that. Think about how you will grow the relationship with your client over time. How are you going to bring in other resources from your organization? How are you going to get them up to speed? How are you going to ensure that you're working with your client in the best way possible as you do that? So our job as sales reps, our job as strategic account executives, really is to make sure that everybody on our team, including the leadership team, by the way, everybody on our team is aware of what our client strategy is, what our goals are for that client, and they have access to the information, the knowledge, the intel that we have about our client's organization. That just helps to create collaboration, connections within our organization, and also with the client as well. Okay, so we are looked at the value pyramid, and we've looked at strategic partnerships. So let's look at another key area that we want to focus on, and that's just what role do we play. When we think about value and how we provide value to our clients today, usually what comes to mind is a couple of things. One, we think of the value of our products or services. Absolutely. What we provide to our clients has to have value. So how do we manage that value? How do we track that value is really key. How do we demonstrate that value on an ongoing basis to the client? One of the other things we think about when we think about adding value to the customer's business is, do we have experience within our organization? Do we have expertise that the customer can leverage? That's another way to add value, by connecting the client's business to our business. The third way, and I would probably say, and again, I'm biased given the role that I have and the background that I come from, is that your relationship, what you bring to the overall connection and the overall partnership with your client has enormous value, not just to your customer, but to you as well. The way we approach that relationship, the way we approach that partnership, how we structure the partnership, and specifically the role that we play in our role as a strategic account executive, we can differentiate us from the competition and can help create that stickiness between ourselves and our clients. So one of the very first things I want you to think about is when you think about your role in managing your customer's business or in connecting and playing that relationship role with your customer, is think about how you are a strategic planner. And what we mean by that is, how do you work for both organizations? How do you bring back the issues, the concerns, the problems, the feedback from your customer into your business? And then how do you manage that internally within your organization? As well as when there are new things happening within your organization, new issues, new initiatives, new products, how do you manage that communication, that planning, and bring that into your customer's business? So really think about your role as a connector. How do you do that well between your organization and your customers? And what is your vision for your customer's relationship? Have you set a customer vision? Have you set an overall account goal? Do you have clear objectives to help you to reach that goal? From those objectives, what are the specific actions you can take to help you and your customer to achieve that goal? Have you mapped that out? Have you discussed it with your customer? And are you both in agreement about the direction you're going in your relationship together? That's part of strategic planning, thinking things through. Often in a sales role, I get lots of pushback from people that I work with that say, Kerri, I have no time to plan. I'm in front of the customer. I'm trying to do that as much as I possibly can. Frankly, a lot of my time is spent managing internal issues, putting out fires, responding to emergencies as they come up. And again, I had a sales leader that I worked with who would say this all the time, and I love this saying. And what she would say is, if you don't have time to plan, you don't have time to do. Planning is such a huge part of our role. It may be a small part of our role, but if we don't plan appropriately, if we don't set goals, if we don't truly figure out what our overall account strategy is, then we're just wasting time in front of the client. We want to make sure that we are putting a plan in place that makes sense, that is flexible, that we can discuss with the client. And then when we are in front of the client, when we are in front of key contacts within the client's organization, we're making the best use of that time possible. So that really is what it means to be a strategic planner, to manage your time effectively, to put those goals, those objectives in place that'll help us help you and your customer to reach success. So let's look at one other role, or a couple of other roles in particular that I think are important in what you do every day. The next one is your role as a facilitator. And when I think of facilitation, I really think of, how do you actually just make stuff happen, right? How do you actually move things forward? I've worked with a sales rep that loves to use metaphors to describe how he thinks about his role in sales. And he often uses this one, and it's actually even a commercial, I think, on TV. It's cowboys herding cats. And he sees his role as that, right? He's the cowboy herding cats. If anybody has ever tried to get a cat to go from one place to another, it is really difficult. But that's what facilitation is all about. It's how do I actually work with the client so I'm moving stuff forward. And it can feel sometimes like it takes a tremendous amount of effort, time to do that well. So how can we enhance our ability to make stuff happen so it's easier for us and easier for the customer? So how do we handle implementation issues when they come up? Have we thought through what could go wrong? Have we thought through what our contingency plans might be? Have we facilitated some of those interfaces between the two organizations? So we're bringing in the right resources at the right time to have the conversations when needed. And are we following through to make sure that once, we've signed the contract, our role doesn't end, and we actually followed it through all the way to implementation to make sure that the client is actually getting the value they need from the services that we're providing. So that's that facilitation role. It's making things happen, keeping things moving, and making sure that we are constantly working with the client to ensure they're getting value out of what we've promised to them. Again, I see this as the glue between the two organizations, right? If we are looking to create that synergistic partnership, then we really have to think about how can we make those connections strong, and how can we continue to be the glue between our customers' business and our own. And then thirdly, let's look at your role as the trusted ally. This really is a critical part of building trust and building value with your clients. The more of a trusted ally role we can play, the more connections we'll be able to make into our customer's business, and the better overall relationship we'll have. And what do we mean by trusted ally? Well, are we a supporter of their business? Are we a confidant, right? Do they tell us what's going on within their business in a way that because they need our help, they need our support, they need some guidance from us around what that might be? We know that we've gotten to a certain level within our customer's organization when we move away from talking about our products and services, and we spend a lot more time talking about their business, their objectives, and their initiatives, right? That's being a trusted ally. That's having the right conversations with the client in order to be successful both for us and for them. And so this is all about enhancing trust between both organizations. Are we fulfilling on the commitments that we've made? Do we keep promises? Not just for the rest of our business, but even in our own role. Do we call them back when we say we're going to? If there's an issue, how do we respond to that issue? If there's a problem, how do we help to facilitate resolution for that problem? Do they trust the knowledge that we bring, the expertise that we bring? And most importantly, do they trust us to do the right thing? Do they trust us to have their best interests at heart? I was doing some work recently with an account group, and working with one rep, and he was really in a dilemma. He was selling a solution to a product, and probably like many of you, had some really interesting competitive sort of landscape that he was operating in. So not only did he have competitors in Canada that could provide a similar product to the client, one of his competitors was actually his own company in the US. Just because of the way that they were set up, they were competing against each other. So he really had to think through what is the best approach for the client, and which product, which service is going to solve the client's problem in the best way. And he actually had to take a hard look at his own solution and realize that actually the US product may be better in this instance of solving the customer's problem. So instead of being a roadblock, what he did was he facilitated that for the customer. He got in touch with his reps, his counterparts in the U.S. He was able to help them to work with this Canadian organization. And as a result, everybody got a win out of it. He could have played a different role. He could have blocked it and said, hey, wait a second, this is my account, this is my deal. I don't want to let anybody else into it. But that wasn't in the best interest of the customer. So being a trusted ally really means you've got the client's best interest at heart. Not only do you say it, but how do you actually demonstrate it, especially when it may not be in your best interest to do so. And then lastly, let's look at our role as the business analyst and the consultant. This is really about truly understanding the customer's business. Knowing our own products, knowing the services that we provide, being able to speak to them, these days is table stakes, right? That's a given. We need to know our own stuff. Where we can definitely add value in the client's business is when we know more about their stuff, when we understand their industry, their drivers, what is important for them, what's important for their customers, what are the industry conditions or conditions that are impacting their business. When we can understand what that is and what those things are, and then bring that back into our client's organization, we can ask questions in a different way. We can help them to see their business in a different light, and hopefully provide insights that are going to help them to be more successful as they move forward. I've heard many reps tell me that one of the questions that they like to ask their clients is, what keeps you up at night? How can we help you improve your business? Okay questions to ask, but what I always recommend is do your research first. Find out what some of those key drivers are in your customer's business. Find out what some of those key industry trends might be. And then have a different type of conversation with your client. Ask different kinds of discovery questions. And it may go something like this. We're seeing that within other organizations in your industry, you're really getting hit hard by these particular regulations that are now in place where the government's mandating you maybe to do something in a different way. We've seen that we can help organizations with this by helping them to meet those requirements faster, easier, more efficiently. I don't know if we can help you. And that's where the humility kind of comes into it a little bit, right? I don't know if we can help you, but that's what I would like to explore. So then you ask good questions specifically related to that issue, that concern. That's being a true business analyst, or that's being a true consultant with the customer, is you're bringing your knowledge of their industry, their organization, other organizations that you've worked with, and you're bringing that to them to give them new insights into how they could run their business in a way that's going to bring success to them for sure, and hopefully success to you as well. So those are the 4 key roles of how you as an account representative, as a strategic sales rep, can add value to your business, to your client's organization. So a couple of things to think about. First and foremost, we want to make sure that we're looking at the overall value of our relationship with the client. Where do they sit on that pyramid? What does that mean for them? Then we want to make sure we're looking at where does this fit in terms of our overall relationship? How have we made those connectors within our client's business? And then we want to look at, from these 4 roles, how do we fit into that equation? So let me ask you now, we'll do this as a poll question. Which of these roles that we've gone through, these 4 things that we've talked about, whether it's being a strategic planner, a facilitator, a trusted ally, or a business analyst consultant, which of these 4 roles do you think are most important in your role as sales? And certainly respond to that poll. And if you like, in the chat, please don't hesitate to say why you chose what you did as being most important. We'll give you a moment to respond to that. Okay, let's look at, do we have our poll results? We'll look at that. Okay, some even splits here. Let's see, some of you said the most important role to play is that of a strategic planner. Interesting. Definitely an important role. Some 9% as a facilitator, 36% as a trusted ally, and 23% as the business analyst, that consultant role. Yeah, really interesting. I think, none of you are wrong, by the way. There's no right answer here. I think all of those roles are going to be important, and which one is most important is going to depend on you, your client, the situation, the timing, and where you're going in your relationship, for sure. Now, I had asked the question, why did you choose that specific characteristic or that specific role as the most important? So I'll give you a moment to respond.
So Michael has said it's a hard decision, but I feel like being a trusted ally will open the door to the other three.
Really good point. We really do see that trust relationship with our client is becoming much more important. And it's not about, and I think, Michael, you said it well, it's not about do they like us, right? It's not about do we have a good kind of relationship. It truly is, do they trust us? Do they trust that we will do the right things for them? And do we trust that we've got their best interest at heart? And if the answer to that is yes, then the other roles are actually much more easier to facilitate.
And Danielle really touched on that as well. She said, I chose trusted ally. We are dealing with our clients' finances, and the sensitive nature of it requires that we be completely trustworthy and dependable.
Well, definitely. And we're finding that more and more. Organizations are looking to us to manage complex parts of their business. And they have to provide us with sensitive information, sensitive data. And as a result, we need to be that trusted steward when it comes to truly understanding what they're doing and kind of taking that information from the business, for sure.
And Lee made a great point. They said, also, you become trusted ally if you're filling the other three roles as well.
Oh, interesting. So it's a little bit of a different approach, that if you start with the other three, then trust will come. All great perspectives, by the way. Again, there is no right or wrong answer here. It's all about what makes the most sense for you in the role that you play with your client today. And which levers, which components of each of those roles do you need to then work on in order to enhance your skills, and so that you can bring the right things to the right customer at the right time. And that really is the reality of this for everybody on the phone, is that all of these skills are important. We need to figure out, I'm going to do a little bit of a self-assessment. What do I need to work on? What are the things that maybe I'm missing? What are the things that I need to do better with my client at this time? And then how do you then work on developing those skills? These are not things that are, that come easy for us, for sure. Sometimes they seem like they do, but it definitely are skills and areas that we can work on in our sales careers. And we build our ability to be successful in these roles over time with experience, with learning, with knowledge, and in working more and more with our customers in different ways.
So Angela commented saying, I find most clients are uncertain in the direction to take, so I add value by helping them develop a plan and address various needs.
Yeah, and that does come from the strategic planning component. So I would highlight again, and please, you can steal this quote from the CEO that I worked with, right? If you don't have time to plan, you don't have time to do. So making sure you have a really good understanding of what your plan is, how you want to move the relationship forward with your client, and most importantly, are they on the same page as you? And this is where, from everything that we've spoken about on this session, where it can fall down is if we put the best plans in place, we've got the best account strategy, we've decided we want to have a synergistic partnership with the client, we are going to move up that value pyramid and become a strategic, trusted partner, and the client doesn't agree, or they have a different perspective, or they're in a different place. So a lot of those plans can, fail if we don't actually take the time to check them out, to just have that dialogue and conversation with the client to make sure we're on the same page.
So Youssef has said, consultancy can help them achieve the strategic plan that is already in place. I find it hard to have an organization change or tweak their strategic plan, even with challenging insights.
Definitely. So in that case then, what insights can you bring? What research are you doing that may augment the plan, right? So it really isn't about trying to impact their strategic plan, it's about building one together.
And Danielle has said, we definitely need to work on all four. How exposing, especially planning. I don't know that it is an area that we spend enough time in, if any.
Oh, if I can say this, I'm in violent agreement on that. I truly believe that good planning sets us up for success in all other areas of what we do. Because we can plan to facilitate well. We can plan the research that we do in order to show up well as a consultant. We can even plan how to build trust. So part of that planning exercise, and I totally agree with you, we don't necessarily take enough time to do that today, but it is such a critical role of what we do moving forward, and it does set up our success in all other areas of our relationship with the client.
And Joe has said, as trusted ally, we can work with better information and get to true needs assessment.
Yeah, absolutely. And that means that we can fully understand what's going on in our customer's business, right? And that really is the ultimate goal. We want to know their business. We want to know what drives them to be successful. And then if we can attach ourselves to that, that's what success looks like. It's not about selling more product. It's not about selling more services. It's about solving the customer's problem. It's about enabling them to work with their customers in a different way. It's about helping them to be successful. Everything we do in terms of creating value really does come down to that. It comes down to how can we help our clients succeed. And when we focus on that, it's amazing how our success comes. Our revenue comes, our targets are reached, our quotas are met. All of those things can happen when we focus on what's important to the client.
Francis has said, plan your work and work your plan.
Oh, I love it. Oh, that is, I'm going to steal that quote, if that's okay, Francis. I love that one. And that is at the heart of what it's all about.
And Mike has said, I chose strategic planner because I need to target and spend my time and bring as much value to the customer as he expects without wasting neither party's time and generate as much potential revenue. And see there, I love what you said there because it really is about both sides of the coin, right? It's about the customer and it's also about us. We want to make sure that we are focusing on the customer's needs, and at the same time, that's going to enable us to be successful in our role, and it's going to enable our organizations to be successful. And then Angela just said she had to leave for another meeting, but she enjoyed the presentation. She said there's lots of ideas to reflect upon here. Oh, great. I'm so glad you shared that. And that actually helps us then to move on. So does anyone have any questions on anything we've covered around the value pyramid, the relationships the partnerships that you have with your clients, and your role in developing that value within your customer's organization or within the customer relationship? Okay, so while you are formulating those questions, I just do want to, a couple things. One, thank you all so much for being on the phone. Again, we apologize for some of the connective issues we had earlier on. And then just to remind you that we do have an upcoming virtual training session that is happening March 14th. This is on finding ideal clients. A really great session. Highly would recommend that to everyone. And this is all about how to objectively look past client data to determine where to invest the best return on your time. So, love to get as many clients as we can, but can we actually focus on the right clients at the right time? And this session will really help you to do that. So that's coming up March 14th. So keep that in your calendars. So Danielle has written in, she said, this may be too specific, but our client success manager engages clients by doing a check-in with them to better understand their business and receive any feedback that we need to be better. She finds that she receives a lot of blank space. Clients aren't engaging as much as she would like. Can you speak to clients who don't seem to want to grow with you, or should we attempt a more specific approach rather than the general check-in? Oh, love that question. So here's what I would recommend. And, again, I don't know how often that sort of check-in takes place, but set up a time frame that works best for you and for your client. Is that monthly? Is it quarterly? Is it semi-annually? Is it actually annually? And take that time to actually talk about how do we want to move forward. So what I often find we miss is we assume the client wants us to check in and we, on a regular basis. And we make those check-ins more about us. So my recommendation is actually sit down with your client, and again, you could do this every 6 months, maybe annually, and say, okay, here's how we'd like to work with you. What makes the most sense for you? We'd like to have regular check-in meetings. Here's what we'd like those check-in meetings to be about. And have a real clear agenda of what those check-in meetings will be.
And the way I like to frame that agenda, by the way, is using what I call kind of the 3 Ps. So you start with purpose. What's the purpose of that check-in meeting for you and for the client? What are they going to get out of it? What are you going to get out of it? Right? Why are you guys coming together? Is it just a check-in to kind of go, oh, hey, how you doing? Or are you doing a review of specific issues? Are you doing a review of usage of your services? So first of all, have a clear purpose. The second one is have a clear process for that check-in, which means you've got an agenda, you've got a time frame, you know who's going to be in that session, you know who's going to be on that phone call. You've set expectations, right? And you've set that ahead of time with your clients. And then the last one, which sometimes we forget about, is what's the payoff? So what's in it for the client to have that check-in meeting with us, and what's in it for us? And if we can lay out the agenda in that way, purpose, process, payoff, it's actually going to help us to have a more productive meeting. And then, prior to that, making sure that we're actually having the conversation with the client to say, normally our normal practice is to check in this way with our clients on every, 6 months. This is what we would like to set up with you. Does that make sense? Who needs to be involved? Here's what we'd like to set up as the process. Here's the purpose of that session. Here's the payoff for you and for us. Are you in agreement? So you're getting their buy-in from the very beginning. So then those check-ins are not just us, giving information to the client. It is actually a collaborative discussion that they've already bought into. I hope that's helpful in terms of answering that question.
Yeah, Danielle said, so awesome, thank you. And Michael actually reached out and said, thank you so much, this has been brilliant. I think there's been a lot of valuable insights here.
Oh, wonderful, appreciate that. Well, and again, this is really what we're here to do, is provide some insights into, the role we play as sales reps. We all have, in my opinion, and again, I'm biased, I think we have the best role ever, right? I think we have the ability to learn about different types of organizations. We have the ability to work with our customers in different ways, and we have the ability to demonstrate value on a regular basis. That's a pretty cool job to have. And these kinds of sessions help us to think through just what is our approach, what is that going to look like, and how is that going to work for us.
That's great. So we'll just wait just a few more seconds to see if any more questions come in.
Sounds great. And please, yes, if you do have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them. As I said, this topic in particular is, if it hasn't come across, I hope it has. I'm very passionate about it. I truly believe that the role that we play as sales reps, as account executives, set our organizations and our customers up for success. And the way we approach our customers is so critical in what that looks like.
So we just had one additional comment. Joe said, thank you, Kerri, a lot of great takeaways, which is great.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Okay, so let's just move forward, and we'll we'll do a quick reminder, as I said. There is a session coming up we would love you to participate in. That is the Finding Ideal Clients, March 14th. Again, please mark your calendars, and you can sign up for that. And then don't forget, there are lots of other resources available to you through the CPSA. We have a Master Selling Series, which is a 3-course program available. This involves advanced prospecting, strategic account management, mastering objections, negotiations, and closing. And remember, as you take courses through the CPSA, that will help you to earn your designation towards your Certified Sales Professional designation. So keep looking for more information. Kate, did you have anything to add on that?
Nope, this was fantastic. So on behalf of the CPSA, I'd like to thank you, Kerri, and of course our audience for attending. Thank you guys so much for your patience through these technical hiccups. If you would like a recording of the webinar, it will be available in the CPSA Learning Hub. And if you have any further questions about this webinar, please feel free to reach out at salessuccess@cpsa.com.
Thank you, everybody. It has been a pleasure working with you, and hopefully we'll hear from you sometime soon.